Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Tom with Capo Fetish. Let's do a Beatles ranking today, shall we? I've had a few requests. When it comes down to it, the Beatles really are the big bang of music. What they started was an absolute cultural and musical revolution. Thousands upon thousands of bands influenced by the Beatles, and music just completely went into different areas all over the planet. So here we are, paying homage. So I'm going to do all 13 of their British albums. You know, I don't dislike any of their albums. I love all their albums. There's some I think you could really say that this list is more of what I listen to least to most, right? So I'm going to start off with number 13, and that's the soundtrack of Yellow Submarine. There's a lot of gems on this record. A couple on side one I think are some of their greatest songs ever. One being It's All Too Much by George Harrison. I think that's an incredibly revolutionary and underrated track. Just, it's like 6 to 8 minutes long, depending on what version you listen to. But yeah, I mean, that song alone should have been on one of their initial releases and not relegated to this kind of hodgepodge of an album. It just takes you somewhere. And like I've mentioned in previous videos, it is kind of like rave music before rave music, very, very forward-looking and revolutionary. And then you've got It's Only a Northern Song, which almost made it to Sgt. Pepper, which is another great, really experimental track, also featured in the film in a really cool way. And then you've got Hey Bulldog, great rocker. It's what is it? All Together Now? Yeah, the song that ends the film by McCartney. Great stuff. And then you've got, two that are already on other releases, All You Need Is Love and Yellow Submarine from Revolver. And the second side, a lot of people bag on the orchestration, but I think it works really well in the film itself. I think they're really nice orchestrated cuts. They have a kind of magical quality to them. I mean, I don't listen to side too much, but when I've watched the movie, I think the orchestration that George Martin came up for the film is just fabulous. So anyway, this is coming in at number 13, and I think it has definitely its stellar moments, but, it's not really a full-on Beatles album. So coming in at number 12 is 1964's Beatles For Sale. I think all the Beatles originals on here are fantastic. I don't really care for much of the cover songs, like Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby and Honey Don't and Kansas City. But I've always loved 8 Days a Week and I Don't Want to Spoil the Party. I always thought that was one of their best underrated singles, A and B sides. No Reply, Babies in Black, Every Little Thing, What You're Doing, I'll Follow the Sun, all just great songs. This album is kind of like a bridge between Hard Day's Night and Help. It doesn't really sound like the sweet sounds of Hard Day's Night. It's sounding a little more darker, a little more introspective before they hit that really just that new sound on Help. But yeah, I don't listen to this as much as I used to when I first bought it, but it does have a few of my absolute favorite Beatles songs. And again, the originals are fantastic. The covers are a little, subpar. So this is coming in at number 12, Beatles For Sale. Coming in at a number 11 is With the Beatles. I think this is a great, joyous album of the early days of Beatlemania. Kicks off with It Won't Be Long, stellar Lennon song. There are some covers on here, but they're great covers. Money, which ends the album, it's kind of like Twist and Shout, just has that great belting vocal from Lennon. You've got All My Loving, the hit from McCartney. The first song George Harrison wrote, Don't Bother Me, is on here as well. Fantastic. And then you've got, some less than stellar stuff. Little Child. All I've Got to Do is great too. That's just another fabulous early Beatles song. Devil Earned Her Heart. Not a Second Time. I always thought You Really Got a Hold on Me was a great cover. I remember hearing that for the first time on the Beatles' second album, the US album, thinking that was just stellar. So yeah, this is a great album. I even like Till There Was You. I know a lot of people kind of bag on that one, but McCartney's vocal on that is so smooth and so awesome. Yeah, this is just a great example of the early days of Beatlemania. Late 1963, released on the day of JFK's assassination. So like a whole new era was starting here with this album, in a way, when you think about it. So this is number 11 with the Beatles. Number 10 is Let It Be, released in 1970, recorded in early 69. Not, the last one released, but not the last one recorded. There was a time in my life where I played this quite a bit, and always loved Two of Us. I love the live version of Dig a Pony. There's some songs on here that I've never cared for, though. I've never liked Long and Winding Road. Always felt that was a little depressing and an odd choice for the last Beatles single released. I've Got a Feeling rocks, though. Fantastic. The trade-off vocals between Lennon and McCartney. And McCartney's vocal is just fantastic in the beginning. So just, I love when McCartney belts it out. I like that bluesy voice he uses now and then. And then the title track, Let It Be. I've always loved the version on this album, the Harrison solo, the distorted, melodic, just heart-filled solo. I think that's the best version of Let It Be rather than the single version. Then you've got Across the Universe, one of Lennon's greatest songs. But For You Blue, it's okay. It's one of my probably lesser favorites of Harrison. One After 909, a song they recorded in '63 that almost made it onto Please Please Me, is recorded here live on the rooftop. And I gotta say, when I watched the Get Back documentary, and I watched that whole rooftop performance, and that was just fucking magic. You know what I mean? Just seeing that whole performance in its entirety just kind of gave me goosebumps and a chill up my spine. They could have kept going for a little while, but it's kind of good that they stopped when they did to secure the legacy and just secure the quality, So, yeah, not bagging on this album. It's a fantastic album, but I just don't listen to it as much as others, and I think it's there's just a tinge of sadness to it. I've always thought something just a little bit disconnected about it, but I think it's still great. Let It Be, coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9 is the debut, Please Please Me. And when you think about it, early '63, this is a really great debut. All their originals are fantastic, like Do You Really Want to Know a Secret? I Saw Her Standing There. P.S. I Love You, the title track, Please Please Me, really showed from the start that this band was onto something different sounds, different chord changes. And of course, Twist and Shout, just an amazing just belter from Lennon. I think they did it in one take. I think he had the flu or he was sick or something. And some great cover songs. Baby It's You, really good. Boys I like, but with Ringo does on that, it's really joyous. Ask Me Why is another great one. Yeah, this is just a stellar debut from the Beatles here, and really shows just a hint of what's to come in '63 and '64. And yeah, this is coming in at number 9, Please Please Me. Coming in at number 8 is '67's Magical Mystery Tour. I think song for song, this is just as great as Sgt. Pepper. May not have the cultural relevance as that album, but I mean, you look at side 2 alone, right? Strawberry Fields Forever, one of their greatest songs, one of their most innovative, just magical songs. Penny Lane, one of McCartney's greatest. Baby You're a Rich Man, one of the most underrated psychedelic tracks from the era. Of course, All You Need Is Love, Hello Goodbye. Side 1 is kind of heavily dominated by McCartney. The title track, Fool on the Hill. Fool on the Hill is just an amazing melody. I always loved Flying. Thought that was a really unique kind of strange instrumental. And one of the darkest songs they ever did, Blue Jay Way by Harrison. Your Mother Should Know. And then, of course, one of the greatest innovative songs of their career, I Am the Walrus, with that gritty Lennon vocal and all that went into that song. It's just amazing, So this album is just, I would give this album a solid 5-star. I think it's just a great listen. And I think it's right up there with Sgt. Pepper. So this is coming in at number 8, Magical Mystery Tour. Coming in at number 7 is Sgt. Pepper. Why so low, Tom? Why so low? Well, I think they put out better records. I understand the cultural significance of this album. I was only 2 when this came out, so I didn't feel that. But I've watched enough documentaries to know like this was the most important thing that happened in '67, along with all of the other great albums like Are You Experienced and The Doors. But this was kind of like a game changer with production. And I'm sure if I was 16 at the time, I would really, really understand that. We didn't have this album in the family at the time. We had Magical Mystery Tour, but we didn't have Sgt. Pepper. I bought this when I was about 8 in 1973, and I loved it. Played it a lot. I think it has just some fantastic songs. It's very heavily dominated by McCartney. I would prefer a little more Lennon on here. But there's 3 songs in a row that I just love. Lucy in the Sky, Getting Better is one of McCartney's best, in my opinion. Fixing a Hole is great. I've never really cared for She's Leaving Home. I always found it a little too melancholy, a little too melodramatic, but that's just my opinion. Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, cool song. Within You Without You, one of George's best Indian tunes. When I'm 64, never a huge fan of that. Lovely Rita, Good Morning, Good Morning. They're okay. I mean, they're good. And then, of course, you've got the epic A Day in the Life. I want to read you a little passage from the Rolling Stone record guide from 1979. This came out in 79. This is their first record guide they ever came out with. So I want to read a little passage to you about what they said about Sgt. Pepper, okay? So, what they said was, Sgt. Pepper may well be the best-known pop album of all time. Its release was greeted with an effusion of paeans, citing it as a bridge between pop and art. But Sgt. Pepper was really a thickly detailed, somewhat stiff collection of generally less than great Beatles tunes, vaguely molded into a whole. It was not, as many speculated, a concept album, but rather an inortly produced and specially unified pop work. So I kind of agree with that statement from Rolling Stone. They gave it a 4-star. I'd give it this was back in 79. They even gave Pet Sounds a 3-star back then. So they were a little hard on the album. I'd give it a 5 just for its just innovation, its relevance, everything about it. It's great. But I just don't think song for song, it's one of the greatest Beatle albums. So anyway, let's move on. Okay, that was number 7, Sgt. Pepper. Let's go on to number 6. Last album by the Beatles, Abbey Road. A finely produced album, probably their best produced album in my opinion. This sounds like kind of like the blueprint of a lot of 70s records to come from a lot of artists. Very, very well produced. Has some of their most engaging songs. But I'll admit, I don't like Maxwell's Silver Hammer. I think, coming right after the heels of Come Together or something, Maxwell's Silver Hammer at number 3, just kind of an odd choice. Might have been better B-side. But, you got Oh Darling, which has an amazing Paul vocal. You got Octopus's Garden. And I think I Want You, She's So Heavy is just absolutely transcendent, right? That guitar thing at the end and the white noise, it just, I don't know. I think, and that scream that Lennon does in the middle there, I never get sick of I Want You, She's So Heavy. And then, of course, side 2 is just absolute pop perfection. Here Comes the Sun, Because. Have you ever heard any better harmonies than Because? I mean, it's just heavenly harmonies. You Never Give Me Your Money is just an amazing song. It's like 3 or 4 parts. I think that's one of McCartney's greatest songs. And the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 part at the end. Magic. And then the whole suite. Sun King, Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window. Golden Slumbers, I think, is the best McCartney vocal of all time when he belts it out there. And then the end, them trading off guitars, and of course, Her Majesty. Yeah, I mean, this is just, it's a lot of people's favorite Beatles album, but again, I think there's still better Beatles albums. And, what's good about the Beatles collection is everybody has their own opinion, what hits them the most, what really gets them in their soul. But this is coming in at number 6, Abbey Road. I love Abbey Road. I just never really cared for Maxwell's Silver Hammer, but it doesn't stop it from being a 5-star classic for me. So Abbey Road coming in at number 6. Coming in at number 5, you may be surprised, is Help. This might have been one of the first albums I ever heard in my entire life. I heard this album while in diapers and as a toddler. And I think side 1 of Help, personally, is one of the greatest Beatles sides of all time. Help, The Night Before, You've Got to Hide Your Love Away, I Need You, Another Girl, You're Gonna Lose That Girl, and Ticket to Ride. Absolute 1965 pop perfection. That melody on the verse of Ticket to Ride, oh my God, it's so amazing. And the chiming guitar, Ringo's drum beat, the title track of Help, the way it kicks in. I mean, these songs are just absolute ear candy, in my opinion. Just absolute ear candy. The Night Before is just a great Paul vocal. I love when he uses that range in his voice. You Gotta Hide Your Love Away, I Need You, George's first awesome song. You're Gonna Lose That Girl. The harmonies on this record, just phenomenal. I just think this album, Help, was a, people talk about Rubber Soul being like a huge leap. To me, this is a huge leap from Hard Day's Night and Beatles For Sale. They sound like a wholly different band. And it sounds very modern to this day. Side 2, maybe not as strong, but still, you see a couple songs here that would go on to influence Rubber Soul. I've Just Seen a Face, It's Only Love, which were featured on the US version. And they sound like they should be on the US version of Rubber Soul. The only thing that weighs the side 2 down for me is Act Naturally, not one of their better covers. I've never really cared for Dizzy Miss Lizzy. Yesterday for me has never been a favorite. I know that's sacrilege, but it just never has been. You Like Me Too Much, Tell Me What You See. If side 2 is as strong as side 1, this may be close to my favorite Beatles album, but I put it at number 5 because I hold side 1 in such high esteem. I love side 1 of Help. So this is coming in at number 5. Coming in at number 4 is Hard Day's Night. To me, this is the epitome of early Beatles greatness. There is just not a millisecond of badness on this record. It's just absolute pop perfection from 1964. And heavily dominated by Lennon. The title track, I Should Have Known Better. If I Fell, those harmonies with John and Paul. And just the chord changes, just gorgeous. I'm Happy Just to Dance With You, a little Lennon-McCartney song they gave George to sing. You got And I Love Her, one of Paul's early greatest songs. Tell Me Why, just infectious. Can't Buy Me Love, just on side 1. Side 2 is just as great. Anytime at All, I'll Cry Instead. What an unusual song for 1964, I'll Cry Instead. Lyrically, musically, Things We Said Today, When I Get Home. You Can't Do That, one of their great early rockers. I remember hearing that on the Beatles' second album. I just was blown away as a child hearing that song. Then it ends with I'll Be Back, one of their most beautiful early songs. To me, this is just the peak of Beatlemania right here, 1964, and a 5-star album. A lot of people rate this low. I never understood it. Yes, it's not as experimental as later Beatle albums, but it's just perfection, in my opinion. So I'm putting it Hard Day's Night at number 4 on my list of favorite Beatle albums. Love this album. Coming in at number 3 is 1968's The White Album. This is an original from 1968 on the Apple label, US version. I always thought this album, even though someone once said it's a flawed masterpiece, and I have to agree with that, but there's something about the listening experience of this album that's so unlike other Beatle albums. Even though it has those kind of odd songs like Why Don't We Do It in the Road and Wild Honey Pie, and it all just seems to fit. The Beatles just make things work and make things happen. I think it's just an album you need to listen to on headphones all the way through. And just a great listening experience. The way one song goes into the next. It's so varied and so ingenious, the whole thing, Side 4 is probably my least favorite side. I don't just like Revolution 9. When I was young, it used to scare the shit out of me. I love it now. The only song I really don't like is the last song, Good Night. I always thought that was a really anticlimactic song for just an amazing album. But I love side 1. Happiness is a Warm Gun is one of my favorite songs. I love Dear Prudence. The whole album is amazing. Sexy Sadie on side 3. Long, Long, Long. Martha, My Dear. It's just one of those albums where it's one of the greatest albums to listen to in its entirety, if you have time. I love the White Album. I've always thought it was way more magical than Sgt. Pepper. There's just nothing like it. It's just a masterpiece. So this is coming in at number 3, the White Album. Number 2 is another just perfect album, Rubber Soul. This is the US version, and though I do love this version a lot, I actually like the American version better. It just plays perfectly, starting off with I've Just Seen a Face. It has less songs, but there's just not a stinker in the bunch here. Whereas the British version has What Goes On, which is kind of a letdown right in the middle of the album. But I don't know. This is just one of my most listened to Beatle albums. Pure magic. Norwegian Wood, The Word, Think for Yourself, Girl, It's Only Love, In My Life, Run for Your Life. Just an absolute game changer here, this album. Probably one of the first real albums that influenced a lot of people, including Brian Wilson. But yeah, not much I could say about it. That is just absolute perfection. And I love the US version because that's what I grew up with. So Rubber Soul at number 2. And then, of course, number one has always been my favorite since I was a child, Revolver. This is one of the greatest albums ever made, start to finish. Just absolute, a combination of just some of the best melodies ever written, some of the best pre-psychedelic songs ever made, some of the best experimentation in pop songs, some of the most gorgeous songs ever written, Here, There, and Everywhere. She Said, Tomorrow Never Knows, two of the greatest psychedelic songs ever. Dr. Robert, I'm Only Sleeping, Eleanor Rigby. What can you say? Look at that cover. To me, that's the best Beatles cover of all time, by Klaus Forman. And even the back cover, to me, always had a lot of mystique. This album was just full of mystique as a child. Looking at the cover, listening to the music, it just doesn't really get much better than this. This is, to me, like really one of the greatest albums of all time. Top 5 albums of all time. It just never gets old. It's always just an absolute magical experience listening to it. Came out in '66. It still sounds as great as it did when it first came out. So yeah, Revolver for me is number one. Always has been number one. And there's just not a bad moment. Even Yellow Submarine fits into the mix. Love it all. And one other thing, I just love You Too. I think that is one of George's best songs ever. So anyway, that's enough rambling. That's my Beatles ranking from 13 to 1. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, everybody. See you soon. Bye-bye.